Can I just read you this? And I'm not sure where it falls, but it just struck me as an email I received this week. This is an individual that says, I have been summoned as a prosecuting witness in a multiple larceny and drugs case that required a special sitting of the Circuit Court. Present was a judge, 12-man jury, 5 Gardaí, a senior counsel and solicitor for the state, a senior counsel and junior counsel and solicitor for the defence, 4 court staff and my good self. The accused didn't show up. I asked the guards who had worked hard on the case if there would be any consequences for this no-show, and they said, no, it's the system. Please tell me that someone in politics is leading the charge to radically change this system, as the status quo is the most farcical and flagrantly wasteful I could ever imagine. Is that like, because the state would have paid for the judges, the senior counsel, and all of that, is that a regular occurrence in the system? And if it is, I know we could be bordering on policy matters here, but surely if that were to happen on a regular basis or even not so regular basis, it should be of concern to the Department of Justice to ensure that whatever legislation could be suggested to the Minister would be suggested to change this.
Yeah. I agree entirely, Cathaoirleach. Of course, if this was a regular event where you had the entire criminal justice apparatus gathered in a court and somebody was brought before it and charged with a serious offence and that person didn't show and that there was no consequences for that individual, clearly that would have the most serious consequences, and that would be entirely negating very good work by other agencies in the criminal justice system. But in the finish, a judge in court, if somebody's directed to appear there, if that person doesn't appear, there are a number of options open to them in terms of directing that they be arrested under a bench warrant.
No, I can understand that, Mr. Waters, but my point is that before assembling this group of, I'm sure it's a costly affair, that there would be some assurance that whoever was to appear in court would appear in court.
Well, clearly,
the funny thing that when these departments discover that they owe money to revenue, they suddenly front up and tell them and pay penalties and interest. But yet when they owe money to you, if you're giving them a soft option, a soft way out, they don't mind not paying you. And I would like a list of those that owed you the money dating back, I don't care when it was. And let's see who owed you the money over that period of time. It might be your fault or your difficulty that you didn't collect the money, but it certainly is a very poor reflection on local government, who expect the taxpayer to comply with all of their collection efforts for monies due to them, and that they wouldn't pay their bills. And I do think it's a poor reflection on them.
We will certainly, Chairman, supply you with that information. And we would take entirely aboard what you're saying there. Of course, we would not like to be in a situation where we're writing off what is a significant amount of taxpayers' money to another arm of the state. But we do acknowledge as well that on the ultimate, how far we can go. But look at we will have a look at this again to see if there are other measures and steps that we can take to ensure that we get greater compliance from.
I won't prolong it, Mr. Waters, but how far can you go? Well, how far would revenue go to collect its debt?
Well,
how far will all of the other agencies of state go with marginalised and poor people or people in distress to collect their debt?
Yeah,
how far will the bank go to collect its debt, even though they were bailed out by the taxpayer? And here we have organisations within the remit of the state, of the CNAG, partially, because they're not local authorities are not accountable. Another cop-out. But anyway, I think that they should be asked and they should be named so we know who we're dealing with. And Mr. Waters, in terms of the tribunals, would you remind us again of the tribunals that are ongoing and their costs in 2014-15?
Well, I'm waiting for the note here on that. There are a number of tribunals which are continuing on for a number of years, and then a number of new tribunals which have emerged in recent times. The O'Higgins one which Commission's inquiry, which is looking into the issues that were raised in the Gearan report. That's sitting at the moment. That's underway. It has a budget, I think, of something 1.4 million. That's underway at the moment. We have a commission into the location of victims' remains, which has been sitting for a very significant number of years. That's looking at the remains of people who disappeared during the Troubles.
Which one is that?
The Commission of the Victims' Remains. Location of Victims' Remains Commission. We have the
so
one...
That's what, 5.16?
In
total?
In total, yes. In total, yes.
So the total spent to date, if we take it from the top perhaps, it might be easier.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. The Morris Tribunal.
Yes, that's the tribunal that looked into the Garda malpractice in Donegal.
That's running at 66.
We think that perhaps that will finish at 80. We think at 80 million. It may not even go that high. We're talking about third-party legal costs that need to be paid for that.
So it may not go as high as 80 million. At the moment, it's at 66.3.
Yes. That's the tribunal that essentially informed the government's proposal to.
I understand what
to the Gardaí.
The Smithwick's Tribunal then,
that tribunal was in relation to the murder of the two RUC people from Dundalk.
But do you think it will end at 14.2 million?
We think there are further third-party costs coming in respect of that. 5 million to date on that. Year to date on this year, 5 million this year.
So it's almost 20 million
almost 20
right now as we stand, with possible third-party costs still to come in.
That's it. Yes.
Further.
No, 5 million are third-party costs. And there may be more.
Okay, so I say 20 million at the moment. Location of victims, you dealt with that.
Dealt with that, yeah.
5.6. The other Commission of Investigation then, 2.783 million.
That's completed. That's done at this stage. That was relating to the murder of a prisoner of Mountjoy. That's been completed. The next one under section 42.
Roman children, that's 80,000.
Yes, that's completed as well. The Road and McLaughlin Commission has started last year. We think about $500,000 max on that one. That's in foot of a requirement under European law when a person is killed by a member of the Gardaí.
So far, going on into the Cook inquiry, 11.
That relates to the events in GSOC in terms of that inquiry around that, and that's complete as well. And then the next one is Judge Clark. That relates to the Garda that died tragically in Donegal, and that's underway at the moment. And then finally you have the Higgins, which is in Cavanmon and foot of the Gearan.
So all in all, these tribunals up to date have costed somewhere in the region of 110 million.
107 million, yes. Yeah.
With some of them ongoing relevant to the third-party costs.
Yes.
Yes, and a point, Chairman, on the Cook inquiry, the main costs will be borne at the Taoiseach's department.
Yes.
These are administrative costs of the department servicing.
That's correct. I agree with the Controller, yes.
And is there, bearing that point in mind, is there any department, or is it your department, that will bring the total costs together to present them to public accounts? In other words, that any other department that had a cost incurred, just to give us a full picture in relation to all of these inquiries? Or is that the only example of another department being involved?
I think it's the only one, and there were particular circumstances around that, but this is the only one. So,
and would the cost of the Taoiseach's department be much?
I think of the order of 300,000, but I subject to checking. I will come back to you on that, Deputy Chairman. I think of 300,000.
I think, Chairman, it might be worth pointing out that a number of these, let's say, would involve in Garda Síochána.
Yes.
There may be internal administration costs in Garda Síochána that are not necessarily reported, even on their own vote, as costs associated with some of those inquiries, and they would be considerable.
So the ones that we can really stand over are the costs here before us, which 107 million, you say.
Yeah, they would tend to be panels and legal representation and expert witnesses.
Yeah. I think as well it's important to point out that these go back to in the first instance in 1974 in the Criminal Injuries Compensation Tribunal, but some of them go back to 2002, 2005 and 6. So it's over a lengthy period.
I still hope we've learned lessons as to how you put inquiries like that in place and how you monitor them and control them.
Yeah.
Because 107 million is a huge amount of money. Because Deputy Deasy raised an issue in relation to Garda inquiries and the need to
Yes.
place emergency around those.
Yes.
In recent times, it's sort of been the case where if an issue arises, sometimes at the HSE, they refer it to the Gardaí for inquiry.
Yes.
In one particular instance where it was subject to the CNAG's report, it was about a SIP2 fund and the HSE. Once that happens, then our investigation here has to be parked, so on. And it's very difficult to understand how a matter that's being investigated by the PAC and then suddenly referred to the Gardaí for investigation, that it isn't given a priority as to whether the Gardaí can actually conclude their investigations or not. And what I'm asking is that in some way priority has to be given to matters that are being debated here or being investigated here, and the Gardaí should be encouraged. I'm saying this to try and be helpful to the work that we do and that they do. And that if there's a way of dealing with it more efficiently, it will certainly be helpful to the Oireachtas committees. And I'm just saying that in the context of what Deputy Deasy said, and maybe in terms of legislation or discussions that you might have with the Commissioner.
I'm happy to convey that point, and I agree with you personally as Commissioner. I will do so after this meeting, because I take the point entirely from both yourself and Deputy Deasy. I share with you as well that the public interest requires that when these issues are raised, that whatever public information should be out there in the public domain is put out there in the public domain as quickly as possible. I think it's in all our interests that we do that. At the same time, I think clearly we have to be aware of the fact that in doing so, we don't cause a further difficulty and we don't jeopardise a prosecution if a prosecution is in course. But nevertheless, I take the point entirely, and I will.
I'd say that it's what is bearing all of those circumstances in mind, but it is important that we try and resolve it. In terms of the police stations that were closed and the saving and so on, I just want to echo what Deputy Deasy, Deputy Ross and others have said, that there is huge concern in rural Ireland about this, to do with the carrying of firearms, the violent raids on commercial businesses and so on, and indeed people in their private homes and the manner in which they can be treated during some of these raids, and it's frightening. And I would encourage the Gardaí to do whatever is necessary wherever these raids have peaked to try and deal with the issue or to provide that locality with more forces to give comfort and commitment to the community. And I know that they make the effort to do that, but at no stage in the course of doing it should resources become an issue, because otherwise that in itself is a kind of defeat in the face of the alarming escalation of these burglaries and violence that has taken place.